Hey there, Sandra here. I want to give a couple updates on the hearings that I had on Friday, August 9th and Monday, August 12th. As many of you know, I filed two lawsuits within the last year. One of them is against the state of Iowa and against our current governor's, her campaign committee for the last election cycle, because her campaign committee, called Kim Reynolds for Iowa, earned over $2.5 million, and this was earned on the backs of her promising to violate the rights of transgender people. She performed multiple acts of defamation against transgender people, and I also alleged, besides defamation, unjust enrichment, because her campaign earned all this money via promising these rights violations, which did in fact occur, hence the state being sued as well. It's a four-part lawsuit. Part one has to do with local officials who, here in Ames and Story County, I was repeatedly arrested by the same officer on false charges. I got arrested for using the women's restroom, and another one because my current name and gender didn't match my old Iowa records, and his demeanor changed toward me when I told him I was transgender. You can read all about this in the lawsuits themselves, but essentially after the third time that I was arrested, a different officer met me in the hallway and said that if I heard what was the conversations that were happening behind the scenes, I would leave the state for my safety. And I remained homeless for about 8 years, afraid to return to my home state because of this. And I returned in 2018, and in 2022, when ordering copies of the dockets from these old cases, well, first I found out there's charges on my record I didn't know about, and when I opened up these old cases, I found out that there was fraud which happened behind the scenes, actually a particular type of fraud called extrinsic fraud. It's just explained in the lawsuit. I'll attach links below, so you can read about them in detail, and you can read the filings firsthand. So part of it, I remained homeless, afraid to return to my home state based on this off-the-record warning that I received from a local Ames police officer. Part of it, I returned to Iowa after years of homelessness in the state of Iowa. Supreme Court ruled that transgender surgeries are medically necessary and have to be covered by Medicaid. Within 2 months, the state of Iowa's legislature and executive branch, Kim Reynolds, signed into a law specifically to deny access to health care, knowingly violating two standing rights within the Medicare and Medicaid Act. These are also rights that are secured by the 9th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And again, that's detailed in the lawsuit. The third part of the lawsuit has to do with the other lawsuit against two local businesses. These two lawsuits are directly related, and based on the state's response to a discrimination complaint I filed with the Iowa Civil Rights Commission, that gave rise to this other section of the lawsuit against the state. So in response to me filing a discrimination complaint, the respondents, these two businesses, submitted about 10 extremely damaging false statements about me, and they submitted it alongside a falsified document. And another document arguably was also falsified. It was essentially out of context statements I made, screenshotted, and rearranged in context to try to make it as if these false testimonies were true. The Iowa Civil Rights Commission, I showed them hard evidence that several of the lies, and their website says that if there's a reasonable possibility of probable cause, they'll screen in the case for investigation. In practice, this isn't what they're doing. If an officer were interrogating a suspect and the suspect gave them multiple statements that the officer knew were false, the officer could say, well, that's probable cause, so I knew they were hiding something, and it gave me reason to investigate. The Iowa Civil Rights Commission should have done the same, but they did not. I filed with the Office of the Ombudsman against the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. Essentially, the Ombudsman office reviews to make sure other agencies are doing their jobs properly. And they sent me a ruling, Estabrook versus Iowa Civil Rights Commission, which essentially said that this Civil Rights Commission is under absolutely no obligation to screen in cases for investigation, even when there's prima facie evidence of discrimination. So that means even when there's prima facie means at first glance, like blatant and apparent. So one of the torts I alleged with the Iowa Civil Rights Commission was fraudulent misrepresentation. If you are not screening in every case, even when there's probable cause, and then write that on your website. Don't mislead taxpayers and say, we're screening in every case, we're taking care and making sure vulnerable populations are safe. Right, and don't mislead victims of discrimination and say that you will screen it in if there's a reasonable possibility of probable cause. Tell them the truth. Say, we lighten the load on the courts, etc. But we only can take so many cases. Just write what is accurate on your website. Hence the fraudulent misrepresentation. There are some other issues I found when I went through this process. For example, the Civil Rights Commission withholds evidence from victims and says, go find an attorney if they turn you away. They won't give you the evidence, and then they say, go find an attorney. Well, what do attorneys want? Evidence. And so this is one of several ways that the Iowa Civil Rights Commission tilts the scales in favor of businesses against victims when it comes to civil rights complaints. And the Des Moines Register released an article about a study that was done that found exactly this. And the name of the article was the Iowa Civil Rights Commission should stop tilting civil rights complaints. Sorry, I don't remember it verbatim. But essentially, this study found that yes, in fact, the Civil Rights Commission protects businesses from liability and tilts the scales against victims. And so I went to the local police department and the Story County attorney, and I found the exact Iowa code that says submitting false statements into the public record is a crime. It's fraud. And the statements made to the Iowa Civil Rights Commission under section 22.1 are in fact public records. So what it looks like, not even what it looks like, what it is that businesses can shirk liability via lying to the Civil Rights Commission, but what's worse is they can enter whatever they want, any defamatory statements they want against complainants, and in retaliation for coming forward, which is what happened with me. And anyway, the Story County attorney chose not to prosecute. So as an elected official, that makes me concerned that maybe he wanted to get reelected and he thought it would be politically unpopular to prosecute beloved local businesses in favor of a trans person who was harmed. And so there's these political aspects at play. And as I was trying to find help for this from government agencies who were not helping at all and making it worse, this denial letter I get from the Iowa Civil Rights Commission, largest letters on it are Kim Reynolds. And I'm seeing on TV at the same time I'm trying to find help, our governor, both in her official and unofficial capacity, was performing acts of defamation against transgender people, while the state was simultaneously fighting this lawsuit to keep their unconstitutional law on the books. Anyway, so the lawsuit is very lengthy. The final part of the lawsuit has to do with how state officials are currently actively conspiring to eliminate legal protections for transgender people that are currently on the books. They're looking to undermine them, eliminate them, and essentially subvert our government. And so they're actively violating United States Code Title 18, Section 241, conspiracy against rights. Conspiracy is just two or more persons actively working toward violating the rights of a class of persons. They're also violating Iowa's ongoing Criminal Conduct Act, which is essentially our racketeering statutes. And this is a really important case for not only myself, but for a lot of, especially Iowa's most vulnerable populations. In May this year, Kim Reynolds the state of Iowa shut down 83 boards and commissions. This included the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. So it's ironic that in my lawsuit, I proposed 5 reforms in order to make the Iowa Civil Rights Commission fair. And instead of coming to the table and talking about this with me, they shut down the commission. So now where will people with disabilities, women who face sex-based discrimination, LGBT people, people of color, where will they go when they experience discrimination? The one agency that they had to turn to just got shut down. My suit requested an injunction or a court order to halt the state's plan to shut down the commission and instead compel the state to make these improvements to make their process for handling complaints fair to either party. And during this, the state came back and they had several arguments in their motion to dismiss as to why this should be dismissed and not move forward. And they cited a section of the Iowa Code within the Iowa Tort Claims Act, which essentially says that the state is not liable for false arrests, false imprisonments, deceit. It actually says deceit. Malicious prosecution. That means, or it can mean, to trump up false charges and to knowingly make false charges. So they can make up false charges, falsely arrest people, throw them in jail. This section of the law also bars claims from inmates. I explained to the judge on Friday, I said, the way this is written, an officer could barge through the courtroom doors right now, beat me, oh yeah, also assault and battery on there, beat me, arrest me on false charges, the state could slander me and throw me in prison, and then they bar claims from inmates as well. And this is the exact type of government that the founding fathers were fighting to avoid us having to deal with. So this suit, even though there's this aspect of transgender rights and safety, and our government shouldn't be actively violating the rights of its citizens, it should be upholding the rights of its citizens. This case goes beyond transgender people. When it comes to the Iowa Civil Rights Act, this is a civil rights issue, and then with these other sections of the code, I mean, if somebody's falsely arrested on false charges, thrown in prison, they should be able to file a suit against the state. That could be anybody. So I think it is an extremely important case, and I challenge that section of the code as unconstitutional. I also challenge the state's legal defense of sovereign immunity, which was first implemented by King Edward I, which was built on the premise of the king can do no wrong. And I quoted Thomas Jefferson, John Locke, Abraham Lincoln, Alexander Hamilton, and showed that this sovereign immunity defense has no place on American shores, and that these founders of our country directly were rebelling against this types of laws that the state of Iowa has enacted, and probably other states have as well. So what I need, well, let me explain the other suit, which happened on Monday. We had a hearing, and essentially, in response to me filing a legitimate civil rights complaint because I faced discrimination, instead of part of the reason you file with the Iowa Civil Rights Commission is if they screen in the case, you end up usually with a mediator that talks through what happened with both parties. I did about 6 months of labor, 20 hours a week. I wanted reimbursed for it, and I would have liked an apology. And instead, the respondents submitted all these false statements and falsified document and whatnot to the Civil Rights Commission. So I was unable to find an attorney. The cheapest quote I got wanted $5,000 up front, $275 an hour, which is way beyond what I can afford. All of the free legal aid organizations like Drake University Law Clinic, Iowa Legal Aid, Story County Legal Aid, and every other one that I found don't take fee-generating cases. They pretty much do divorce custody cases and tenant-landlord disputes. So, which leaves people that are turned away from the Iowa Civil Rights Commission up Schitt's Creek. They basically say, go find an attorney, and these are vulnerable populations. I personally don't know anybody that can afford $5,000 on the spot for an attorney. And then $275 an hour. The average Iowan earns just less than $19 per hour. So, where was I going with this? So I ended up filing. I've been studying law privately for years. I'm currently a pre-law student, transferring to Iowa State University, and I've compiled thousands of legal term definitions onto reunitethestates.org. So I'm in a rare situation where was actually able to figure out how to file these lawsuits without the help of an attorney. I'm self-represented. It's also called pro se. But when that's your only option, that's what I did. Now, what I need is to order a copy of the transcripts from the Friday and the Monday hearings. I need to review them because if there's anything missing, any legal arguments I made, I need to make sure to submit those to the court so that those arguments are reflected in the record. This is a big concern to me because when I was at Standing Rock, some of you know the Bismarck Tribune wrote 2 articles. One was about my case. The other one, they also talked about my case. And it was about how a self-represented protester was acquitted midway through trial, and I self-represented. When I ordered a copy of the transcript after that hearing, after that trial, key legal terms that I stated during court were not written into the record by the court reporter. And essentially, it looked to me like the reason that they did that was to shield the state from liability for a countersuit. So I'm concerned that key legal arguments that I made within the hearings may have been omitted by the court reporter. I hope not, but I need to make sure that they weren't. Unfortunately, the one for the state hearing is $168. The one for against the 2 businesses is $150. I've been working all summer and then before that during school on these lawsuits. So I haven't been working this summer a job per se. Instead, I've been working on these cases which are much bigger than me and important for me to win, not only for myself. There's a lot on the line for these. I've requested my suit against the state, the part when it comes to rights violation against a class of persons, I've requested that section to be certified as a class action lawsuit, which would be huge because I haven't seen any class actions on behalf of transgender adults filed anywhere across the country. And if this could get states to stop knowingly and willingly violating standing rights and jam a little bit of money out of the system, put it in the pockets of the people who are living at the bottom of the human rights barrel, already dealing with poverty overwhelmingly, that would be a big win. So maybe politicians could maybe talk about how to improve our circumstances instead of focusing on violating people's rights and defaming vulnerable populations. Anyway, so if anybody watching this is able to donate any amount toward these transcripts, I know it's a lot of money, but it's over $300 to get a copy. I'm currently applying for jobs at ISU as a work-study student. I was working at DMAC as a work-study student last semester, so this summer I've just been like flatlined financially. I've ran out of what I had, and I would really, really appreciate any amount of help. Please share these articles I'm going to post below, and you know, if you're posting things, national issues or international issues, if you're sharing memes about accepting trans people and why that's important, or you believe in rights for transgender people, I know that it can be more comfortable to share graphics that look pretty and attractive and make a statement. It's not as attractive to share controversy, but I would be very appreciative, and it's very important that these lawsuits are known about and more people are following them. I'm kind of feeling like a lack of support. I see a lot of major news items that people share about, but when it comes to a local issue, there's crickets, and that's an issue in and of itself. So if you stand for civil rights, I hope that you can take a moment to read these articles and share them, and if you're able to donate anything, it's very important. Thank you very much. Bye.